from Park Place Lanes in Wyndham, featuring the best candlepin bowlers from around New England.
Gonna split it. Look at this. Yes! Oh, wow! Right in the pocket.
My goodness.
Oh, there was never a doubt about that one. Good-looking ball. Yeah.
And now your hosts for Candlepin Stars and Strikes, Doug Brown and Dan Murphy.
Welcome once again to Park Place Lanes in Wyndham. Thanks for joining us on another Sunday for Candlepin Stars and Strikes. Doug Brown along with Dan Murphy. And Dan, last week was our first show of the new season, and a pretty good one, featuring Pat Pay and a newcomer, Bob Goslin. But one part of the script stayed the same, and that is that Pat Pay moved on.
Yeah, he got a scare last week. Bob Goslin kept coming after him, second and third game, or first and second games, but Pat prevailed, and he's on to meet another veteran in Bob Moran.
All right, let's meet our two bowlers. First of all, let me remind you that we have only 5 bowlers in the ladder series now. We're moving toward a Tournament of Champions at the end of the season in the spring. We'll, of course, be explaining more about that as we move along, but let's meet our two bowlers for today's show. First of all, our number 5 seed and the winner from last week from Somersworth, New Hampshire, Pat Pay.
Okay, and Pat carries an average of 131, and he qualified for the show with a 5-game total of 671 to be placed number 5.
And in that match last week when he threw the 401, he threw a 134, then a 133 middle game, and 134 again at the end. Now, it's worth mentioning that in the 19 previous appearances that Pat has made with us now, 13 of those 19 times, his best string has been the 3rd string. And again last week, he tied his best string for the first one, but he got the string when he needed it at the end.
Keeping that in mind, if you got a lead on him, don't let up, because he's going to come after you. Yeah, he's a great competitor.
All right, now let's meet another guy who's been here with us before on a few occasions, Bob Moran, our number 3 seed for this championship from Billerica, Massachusetts.
And Bob comes with that elusive high single many of us like to have, a 200, and he qualified for the show with a 689 for the 5 games to seed him number 3.
All right, and the runner-up in this week's show will receive a consolation check for $175 and also the runner-up plaque from the NNR Trophy Company of Winchendon. The winner, of course, moves on to face our number 2 seed, Dave Cromie. And in 2 weeks, Dan Broder will be here. He's the number 1 seed, and he'll try to defend that number 1 position in the ladder championship match. We also have our bonus ball contest at the end of the show. We are up now to $170. We hope you have your postcards in. If not, we'll tell you how to do that. And we'll be right back to start this match between Pat Pay and Bob Moran. Should be a good one. Hang in there. We'll be right back after these messages. Championship here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes. Last week, Pat Pay with the 401, knocking off number 4 seed Bob Goslin with a 376. And so Pat moves on today to face Bob Moran. Next week, Dave Cromie will get the winner of this one. And then in 2 weeks, Dan Broder with that big 722 roll-off winning score will try and do his part to defend that number 1 spot and win the ladder championship against whoever survives. Again, $1,000 goes to the winner of the series championship, $500 to the runner-up. The runner-up today will receive $175, and of course we've got money at the end of the show coming up too for hopefully somebody at home who has sent in a postcard to the bonus ball contest. We've got $170 on the line a little bit later. But right now, Pat Pay is set to get us started again this week. A little handshake for Bob Moran, and these two guys know each other pretty well, I would imagine.
Handshake, at the sound of the bell, come out swinging.
The 2, 5, 7. Pat with a 400 triple last week, the 401. Certainly that's nothing new. In fact, that's the 9th time that he has thrown a 400 series here on the show. His overall record here now 14-5.
His opponent, Bob Moran, even 500, 2-2. That's a mark for Pat.
9 spare for Pat Pay as we get another look.
And there's the replays. You see him clearing out the 9 and the 10. So Bob Moran trying to up his record on Stars and Strikes.
Bob from Billerica. Just catching the head pin and lots of damage afterwards.
And he has some rooters here. It's going to be a noisy match, I think. 3 in the 9 left for Bob Moran.
Yes.
It's helpful with the wood in between. Just drives it straight back.
Bob's wife, Carol, has also been on the program with us.
Oh, got a good break there.
Wow, he thought at least one of those would go, maybe both, and they'll both stay.
3, 6, 10, 6, 10, 3, 6, 3. Oh, they're moving so fast. He looked like he was going to be left with the 3, 6, 10 with the 4. 4 toppled over, leaving himself a 3 that you're looking at. 3, 6, 10 for his second mark. Gotta hurry.
Mm. 27 for the first 2 for Bob. And Pat Pay comes up now working on a spare to try and even things up here.
The 1-3 pocket is the pocket that Pat really likes to hit. That 1-2 is not as nice to him. His ball breaking from right to left. He hits the 1-3 pocket, the ball cuts through the pins. You get a little bit of pin action that way.
Pat has made 2 appearances on the program in doubles competition. So in singles, he has a record of 13 wins and 4 losses. And his average is just a shade over 133 for all the strings he's bowled here, which I guess should figure because he's bowled enough strings here to really establish an average, and it's about 2 pins higher than his normal average. Which I guess, based on the general thought about this particular house, Park Place Lanes and Wyndham, would be about right, a couple of pins higher maybe.
Right, it's a high-scoring house.
Bob Moran missing the head pin to the left. I noticed Bob in the warm-ups, Dan, was doing something that every once in a while we'll see one of the bowlers do, and that is he'd throw a couple of balls down and go for the shots, whatever they would be. And then he'd leave whatever was there after the second or third ball standing, whether it be 1 pin or 2 pins, and then he'd take 2 or 3 more shots at spots, and he would aim at certain spots on the lane.
A lot of us do that, and I noticed Bob does some of the things that I used to do, or I still do, and that's shooting at the 10 pin. 10 pin seems to be the hardest for a right-hander, and he'll take just keep a couple shadow balls, we call them, and there's no pin standing up, and just throw a few. Off target to the left, 1-3-6 with the 9, and the 4-7 on the left. You see Bob's average 124. However, on this show, I can just jog my memory here. I think he's averaging about 129.1.
I think you're right.
Doug has done his homework, and I'm reading his crib notes here. He was back with us in December of '85. He bowled against Jack Ray.
Lost a very frustrating match that time to Jack Ray, in fact, as Pat Pay strikes in the 5th.
Yeah, 393 to 390 was against Jack Ray, and there's you see the strike by Pat Pay. Pay and Ray, and
watch out! Watch out!
Almost a double. Came back on October of '86 and defeated Bob Francor 402 to 345, and then again in November of '86. Won again against Skip Prono, 381, 352, and then lost another one, tough one, to a guy named Steve Vadney.
Well, we understand we've had some technical difficulties, but they are straightened out now. While we were away, Bob Moran stepped up and rolled a 9 box in the 5th on lane 32, and now he's set to slide over to lane 31. We apologize for the little problem, but we appear to have everything all set now. Bob Moran is right back in the pocket again. If it falls this way, he'll shoot at the 6-pin.
Watch out.
Oh, my.
In between. If you went a little farther left, I think he would have carried the shot. A little farther right, he definitely would have had the 6-pin. Instead, he capped the wood out in front. Pin went one way, ball went the other. And he ends with a 9. 65 after 6 for Bob Moran. 10-pin lead plus the fill on Pat Pay's spare up in a 6.
And Pat drops 8 for an 18-pin lead.
Leaves himself to 2-5.
through 7. Pat Pay works at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. He and his wife Denise live in Somersworth, and there's a strike.
Trips the 4-pin off the wall to, watch the 4-pin go. The last one standing and just trips it. In the second game, I have another letter, quite lengthy letter, but I answer some questions that a person from North Andover wrote to us. Didn't give us the name, but it's signed TW. So, sometime during the second game, I'll answer some of the questions that they have in the letter.
We may have to do a whole show just to answer that letter.
I know, that's... I think as he watches the new format, some of those questions have been answered for him, and,
or her.
Or her.
Bob Moran trying the cut shot, but didn't happen for him. Trails by 19, and he's opposite a strike. Here in the 8th.
Needs one of those finishes that Bob Goslin had last week in the second game. Off target, 1, 3, 6. And watch out, there's a wood in behind the head pin, which may cause the head pin to go right to one of the right to the left sidewall, right sidewall, and miss the 3-pin. Let's see what happens.
Yes.
Oh, enough to push it right straight back. That was a more difficult shot than it appeared to be for Bob Moran.
Watch the ball here. It almost stops after it makes contact.
That deadens the ball with that wood in behind. Yep. And actually, the ball carried all 3 pins.
Pat Pay now on a strike. Possible double, but the 6-pin will stay. Spare on strike. Started to talk about Pat's family a moment ago. Pat and his wife Denise have a daughter, Lisa, who I believe we've mentioned before is here usually every time when her father bowls, and she's here again today. And not only is she here, but she brought the newest member of the family with her. Lisa and her husband Tom have a brand new baby girl, Tamara. They're all here today. We're going to have Dottie Larick check that piece of wood.
Look at her go.
Whew, she's got her track shoes on.
Wow.
Yep.
That a girl, Dottie.
Fine job, boy.
Fine job.
Speed.
Look, follow her back. She has a lot of speed there on the base path.
We can play hit and run, I think, with Dottie.
Wow. You know, Louise Russell from Greenfield, New Hampshire would like to see her in the Red Sox and play for Jim Rice running the bases.
Another spare up for Pat.
In the 10th, and he'll fill that spare. Yep. 132, 142 with the ball to come for Pat Pay in a great opening game. .148.
Yep, 148 for Pat Pay in game one. And now Bob Moran to step up for his final two, and he'll need to do some work here, working on a spare. Oh, my.
Oh, boy.
And it hurts even more because it's on a spare.
There's the competitor Bob Moran is.
Wow.
Made the adjustment, came right back, and almost converted those 9 pins for a spare. A lot of bowls you bowl, they'll get down by this many, and their whole complexion changes, their whole attitude changes. Not Bob Moran. You're going to still have to beat him. This match is a long ways from over. This fellow won't quit. Just keep plugging along.
Spare leave here on the 3-6.
Let's do a lot for his confidence if he can knock this spare off and get a good fill. Gotta hurry, though. Gotta hurry. Off to the right.
Well, Pat Pay will have a pretty sizable lead here after the first game, but a long way to go yet. It'll be a 104 for Bob Moran. Pat Pay with the 148, including a big finish with a strike and 2 spares. And we will come back with string number 2 and also details on the bonus ball contest. $170 up for grabs at the end of the show. Don't go away. Route 28, Windham, New Hampshire, 03087. And again, just a reminder, regular size postcards only, please. The big ones we can't leave in there because it would be a bit of an unfair advantage. All set to go now in the middle string. Bob Moran will lead it off on lane 32. Bob looking to find the range here a little bit as he struggled a bit in the first string. He's got a lot of people here pulling for him, and I'm sure they won't let him get 2 down.
No. Like I said the first game, he's a competitor, and he's not going to give up. He'll try to make those adjustments and come back at Pat Pay. I would say, though, you'd have to beat Pat Pay this game by quite a few to get back into the match. You don't want to go 40 pins behind with 1 game to go against the likes of Pat Pay.
Takes a shot at it.
Okay, I have a letter here from TW, and I told you I'd answer your questions. To the first one, yes. To the second one, no. And maybe to the third one. So I hope that helps you.
Boy, that clears it up for me.
He just mentions that every bowler has certain things that they do and wants to know if there's a reason for doing this, and obviously there is. Sometimes the reason isn't quite apparent to everyone. I'll try to answer these in between the action here.
Bob got a little break there. He was upset with himself for missing the headpin way off to the right.
TW asked, why do some bowlers use a towel before each box? To dampen or to dry their hands? Well, yes, that's it. Nice spare by Bob Moran.
That's a big break, too, because that first ball was way off target, and he was quite upset with it.
And you see the replay. In that time, a little flush in the headpin, but got the benefit of the wood in between. And the answer to that is yes, people do. Some people have a tendency the hands to get dry and use a towel that's dampened on one end. On my own, I like to dry my hands off. I feel like I got a better grip on the ball. So that's the answer to your first question. And the next one, do all bowlers put a twist or curve on the ball? Well, if you're releasing the ball and you get a good follow through, you'll get a natural spin on the ball. Now, whether or not it curves depends on speed, mostly, and lane conditions, another thing that would affect if the ball does break or curve because of the spin put on the ball. But to answer your question, yes, most people, if they get a good follow through, will have a twist or curve on the ball.
Almost for Pat.
And let me see, the third question, do all bowlers release the ball very close to the floor? Well, when I'm giving lessons to people, it depends on the physical ability of the person. If the person does a lot of bending and gets close to the lane, then yes, they will release the ball very closely to the lane. However, many people physically can't bend as much at the waist and the knees as a lot of people. So you have to adapt the release of the ball to the physical abilities of the person who's bowling. So in that instance, it would be an individual preference that your local instructor should work with the person. So, TW, I hope I answered most of your questions, and it's a nice letter, and I wish you could read word for word or everything, but I think that covers everything. The new format will... Nice mark by Bob Moran.
2 in a row. Take another look.
See the triangle in the right-hand corner and the 7-pin. The other questions that they mentioned, I'm sure that when you see the new format, we'll answer those for you, TW, and thank you for the letter.
A well-thought-out letter indeed, and we appreciate the mail, and later on we'll tell you how you can write to us if you'd like to communicate to us other than just joining the contest. We have a separate address if you'd like to mail us a letter or criticism, comment, whatever.
This is the mark that will get Bob off and running.
Oh,
just
boy.
a little heavy on the 5-pin, lefty 8.
He was able, though, to put back-to-back marks together for the first time in the match. One other change that we have made this year, I keep thinking of things as we move along now in the middle of the second show of the new season, and one other change that it's kind of a subtle change, but those who are careful watchers of the program probably have already noticed it, and that is that we're going to have Dottie go down and take care of that piece of wood. It will not come into play, but it'll be a distraction for Pat. He missed that spare. Tough wood on the 7-pin. Here it is.
Yeah, he went too far left, and he knew it. As soon as he let the ball go, the wood spun away, and the second piece hit the wall in front of the 7-pin and came back.
And again, still there. Anyway, the subtle change, which became apparent, I guess, this week, is that the higher-seeded bowler will always have the advantage of going last in the third game. That is something that's changed a couple of times here on the program. We're going to pause right here as Pat Pay puts the strike up in the 4th, and he still leads, but Bob Moran has cut into that lead a little bit here in this second game. We'll be back to finish it in just a minute. Box number 5, just to finish that thought before the break. The higher-seeded bowler, for instance, Bob Moran, in this particular show, will always have the opportunity to bowl last in the first and third games. That's something that we've changed a couple of times, actually, during the history of Stars and Strikes, but it was determined before we began this new season that we should go back to this particular format, and that's somewhat of a reward for the guys who finish in the higher-seeded positions. Most bowlers prefer to bowl last. Oh,
I was going to mention that. Some people might be sitting at home saying, if that is an advantage. Well, we feel that it is, and especially it comes down to 3 pins on one side. Well, look at this.
Needs a break here. Nope, doesn't get it.
If the match is tight, you got 3 pins on one side, 1 pin on the other, and you're shooting for a spare, you only need 2 pins. Well, it changes your way of going at the pins and whether or not you're going to take a chance and try to make the spare if you don't need it. So there is a distinct advantage of going last. Does that cover all of our changes now? It'll take us two weeks to cover everything.
It's funny, when we came in, I didn't think there were that many, and now they're all of a sudden they keep piling up. Bob Moran shooting at the 3-pin.
But the biggest thing is, if you missed last week or the opening of this show, is that the winner of each ladder comes back for a special ladder of just the ladder champions. There's a mark up in the 6th for Bob Moran, and that's going to be exciting because we'll have each of our ladder winners, 6 of them, and we'll go back to the original format with 6 bowlers and 5-week ladder, and that's going to be some exciting bowling.
And that will be to wrap up this season of Stars and Strikes next spring, so that will give us something to kind of point at and just a couple of other extra little things to talk about during the season.
It's disappointing 5 fill on the strike for Pat Pay. a 7. Loses 3 in count there, so he's down by 7 in this game. However, he still holds that commanding lead from the first. Bob Moran with a spare up in the 6 could gain a few more back if Pat fails to match that mark.
But he does.
Question.
He matched it all right.
He likes that lane 31. Got 3 marks in this string, and 2 of them, well, no.
Both strikes.
Both strikes have come on that lane 31.
Bob Moran filling a spare. Off target. May get a break, though.
Well, he's got a very similar shot that he had with the 1-3-6 early in the match. He's got the 1-2-4, but that piece of wood, that nagging piece of wood behind the head pin, could cost him the shot. Just how the ball and the pin react. There it is. Again, no problem. There you see the replay. There was just enough of that pin showing that when he hit the head pin, it actually turned into the 2 and the 4. Another double mark for Bob Moran. Very deliberate. Every ball seems the same.
Again, missing the head pin, and Bob is shaking his head as he comes back. He's got what may, well, it's looking worse all the time now with that wood fading back, but if it comes out at all, he may have a shot at this, the 8-10.
And you called it. He's going to take a good look at it. He's got a double piece of wood, so well, we'll see which way he plays it. I would play the front piece of wood to the right-hand end of it if I could. It should come in contact with the second piece and then fly toward the 10 pin. That's what he's trying to do.
Oh, yeah. Nice shot. Whew. 3 in a row. Bob's happy about that one.
Now, I don't know if too many other people that are involved with Candlepin Bowling know how to play the wood as well as Bob Moran. He's been around the game a few years, and he's learned how to play that wood. And of course, the plastic nowadays is a lot livelier than the wood used to be, but
for the second time, a 5-fill on a strike for Pat. Of course, now he's opposite 2 more marks.
And a disappointing 8-fill after that. So he's had 3 marks, and yet he only has 76 after 7 boxes. So Bob Moran is starting to cut into that lead.
No.
Everything but the 4. So again, doors open for Bob Moran. Fill up the spare and get a few more of them back.
Well, with any kind of a fill for Bob here, more than half of that 44-pin lead is going to be gone.
I mentioned at the closing of that first game, he's going to have to get quite a few back. You don't want to go in 40 pins behind Pat Pay going with 1 game to go. Of course, you know, he's been missing the head pin in the spares. He's due to bury one in one of the pockets and get a good fill. Oh, he's still off to the right. Oh, it's going to get 7.
Boy, he's living dangerously, but he's managed to get some pretty good fills and shootable leaves in spite of the fact that he's missed the head pin. The lead is now down to 18. Oh, wow. Oh, that might have been the best one so far.
And he actually didn't even use the wood. You watch. The head pin takes the 9 pin, the ball takes the 8 pin. Those are the 3 pins you punch out when you remove the 1, 8, 9. That's a great shot. 4 in a row for Bob Moran.
Now he's on the head pin, and wouldn't you know, 2 full.
Well, he wants that wood to stop because he's going to try to split the 3 and the 6, and if the wood rolls too far forward, the ball's going to catch the tip of the wood and go around the 6 pin. He doesn't want that to happen, so he wants a clear shot at the 3-6, trying to jump the 3 pin into the 4-7.
Let's see.
Shot at it.
Let's see.
The wood. The wood cost him the 10 pin. Just what he was trying to motion to get that wood back, because he knew if the wood came out too far, it would cause him a problem, and the ball actually deflected and went around the 10 pin. Otherwise, he would have carried the shot.
Bob had a long and tough look at that after it happened. He punches out the 10 for a 137. 241 through 2.
That'd be an interesting one if we get sometime later on in the show, if we could have a replay of that ball, because I'm sure the ball went around the 10 pin.
Meanwhile, Pat Pay, who's had a rather curious string of his own.
Well, there's no easy shot. I would say he's going to have to go high in the wood, left of the red line. Got to hurry. Just enough.
Of course, everything Pat does here will just extend his lead a little bit, give him a bit more of a cushion as he goes into that third string. Watch out. Well, you can almost see that coming as soon as he let it go.
Ouch.
Well, I tell you, this thing is going to be well within reach going into the final string for Bob Moran. He has made up a lot of ground.
Yeah, disappointing 6, and that's like 210 frames, the last 2 boxes for Pat Pay.
254 will be Pat's total. The difference is down to 13 with 1 game remaining. Once again, it looks like it's going to be a heck of a finish. Stick around. Stars and Strikes continues. We'll have more in a minute. As things have gotten a little bit closer.
Exactly. We also like to acknowledge those people who bring little goodies by. Watch the taping, and June McCarthy came by from Billerica, Mass, and brought some little candy pumpkins for us.
Well, see, we really should put up a sign that says, "Please do not feed the announcers." Pat Pay with a spare in box number 1.
So, June, thank you very much. And I'm going to eat Doug's because Doug declined.
I'm in training.
Yeah, well, I am in too for sumo wrestling. So I'm going to bulk up a little bit. Full on the head pin for Pat Pay.
Now that you've said that I declined, I can have one later on. Nobody will know about it. Boy, Pat has really been struggling on fills for marks. Check the last 5 fills he has had. The 4 marks he had in the second string. He had a 3 on a spare, then 5s twice on strikes, and then a 4 on a spare, and then a 4 on a spare then. Well, you probably hear that in the background. Bob Moran has a lot of people here with him, as we've mentioned, and they've come up with their own cheers.
Bob Moran. That's pretty good.
If they start doing the wave, though, we're going to have to kick them all out of here. We just won't stand for that at all.
Well, it's going to negotiate a piece of wood out in front of the 7-8. I think the problem pin at this shot, I believe, is the 8 pin. 7 pin should go. I would probably try to cap the front piece of wood and drive them all straight back. That's what he's trying to do. That's what he did. Nice shot by Bob Moran.
Not as easy as it looked.
No, not at all.
That is the 9th mark, all spares for Bob Moran. Off target, but again, he has a pretty decent fill and an opportunity for a mark.
Well, he's got the 1-3-7, and I believe if he hits the head pin, he's got a shot at making this, either splitting the 1-3 or being on the left side of the head pin. The ball should carry the 7. Oh.
Okay, get the 2, they're big, Bob, they're big.
You were right about one thing, Dan, and that is that Bob Moran just did not let that first string bother him at all. He came back with adjustments in the second string and came up with 6 marks in that string. And
he'll be the first to admit that he's still not bowling that well because he's not hitting the head pin with the first ball. But he's making the shots when he has to.
Pat Pay will have to show us a cut shot here on the 3-4-6.
He's going to have to go after the 3-6 because I don't think the wood in front of the 4 is any help to him at all.
Tried for it. Right now, through completed frames, the lead is 7 for Pat Pay. I'll tell you, he's been here so many times. He's had a lot of easy wins during his stay with us, but these two, last week and this week, certainly have not been in that category. There's a big spare for him.
Played the 3-6-10, and it came off the wall to carry the 4. And you see the replay. Nice kick of the wood. Bob has got to match those marks to stay with Pat Pay.
That's 12 marks now for Pat Pay. 4 of them strikes. Bob in the pocket that time for a big 9 drop, and now we'll get a chance to see if all that warm-up practice on the 10-pin paid off.
You're never going to see a zoom better than...
Oh, no doubt. Practice makes perfect. No problem there with the 10-pin. On the head pin.
This time the 6.
If you remember earlier in the match, Bob capped a piece of wood in front of the 6 and went around it. This time he's got a clear shot at it.
Bob Moran has just taken the lead by 3. And there's another one back to back. And things are heating up here in the 3rd string. Bob Moran has come back to take the lead. We have 6 boxes remaining. Don't go away. We'll be right back on Stars and Strikes. Out into this one, I should say.
Oh, it all started with candy pumpkins. It's grown.
Pat Pay on a spare.
Oh, that looked like a nice ball going in the 1-3 pocket and decent fill, but pardon the expression, an ugly spare leaf.
This iris is thickened.
And it looks like we're going to have another trip down the lane for Dottie Lorick to take care of that.
Down memory lane.
That's right.
Dottie Lorick. Still moving, Dottie.
I got it.
Dottie working the big scoreboard for us, of course.
It's going to... Oh, stop. I like the pink socks there, Dottie. Nice.
Dottie's a big favorite with the fans here.
She's going to tie her shoelace, though. She's going to trip.
Of course, the weight for Pat, not exactly a spare leave, but time to think about it. Open frame, and of course that means advantage Bob Moran as we come down to the final few boxes here.
Well, that's 2 balls that Pat Pay has buried in the 1-3 pocket. And again, not a real easy spare lead. 5, 9, 10. 5, 8, 10. Trying to cut the 5 over.
Nope.
You wonder why that happens. It's right in the 1-3 pocket. You could have increased his speed on the ball a little bit more and not getting that good pin action that he was getting before. Whatever the reason is, like you say, advantage Bob Moran.
Bob working on a spare, and whatever he adds here over 4 will give him the lead. Oh! I'd say he added 6 more than 4.
You know, this is a sign of a real true champ. You can see the replay of the strike. But Bob has been struggling the whole match. He's making his spares, but he'll be the first to admit he wasn't hitting the head pin. Just kept plugging along, and now all of a sudden he's starting to hit the head pin on the marks, and you can see what's happening.
Tell a funny story. Tell a funny story now too, Dan. In the warm-up ball, the last warm-up ball before Bob, the last ball he threw before we started the show, he threw a strike, and of course he turned around and said, "Can we count that?" And he hadn't thrown a strike since until just then.
7, 9, 10. 2 pieces of wood out front. He's going to try to hit them where they meet. Spin them toward the 3 pins in the back. There it is. And everything but the 10.
Okay, big pin ball. Get the 10.
We now have 4 boxes remaining, and Bob Moran has taken a 16-pin lead. He trailed by 13 coming into this third string, and he now leads by 16.
Let's take it back one string further. For those people who might have just tuned in, Bob Moran was 44 pins behind after the first game, 148, 104. And Pat definitely is rushing right now. Picks the ball up and just really attacking those pins, but I think his pace should be slowed down a little bit. And I think it'll slow the speed down, the ball down a little bit, and get a little better pin action.
Brooklyn side, Pat will have a spare leave.
6-9.
But that wood is not in a real good spot. It's out a few inches in front of the 6-pin. That other piece of wood may help if it moves in a little closer. And then that farthest pin to the left has to be checked. And Dottie taking a look at it, it's still moving, and apparently it's okay. All right, that was not an easy shot. It's a 10, but 2 boxes open, and Bob Moran has an opportunity to really make it unreachable here.
Well, a 16-pin deficit is usually 2 marks. Pat only has 2 frames remaining. Bob has 4, so anything he can put up now is going to make that task that much more difficult. Put Pat Pay into a double strike situation.
Off target.
Oh, you gotta like it, Bob. You gotta like it.
1, 2, 7, but the wood is going right into the channel next to the 7-pin, so somehow he's got to find a way to knock that 7-pin down.
There's what he's looking at. The 10 adds another pin to the lead, making it 17.
This is the box that would make his chores in the 9th and 10th frame a little easier for him if he can put a mark up.
Ooh.
Well,
Boy,
got a
again.
little bit of break.
That is a break. Should have been a spread eagle. Instead, he's really got a spare leave here. That wood is angled very favorably.
But the second piece of wood may cost him now. He wanted that one out of there because the first piece in front of the 3-pin is going to come in contact with the one behind the 2-4. And let's see if it hurts him. No,
Softly,
nice
softly,
shot.
yes, had to hit it softly. That's what kept it going. Here it is.
It's low enough and just uses the other piece of wood.
Pat has just got to throw some strikes here now.
He's definitely got to put 2 marks up and hope that Bob doesn't fill that spare in the 8th with too many. There's one of them. Of course, the ideal thing was to throw a couple strikes. Can't afford a low fill on the spare. Got to hurry with that one. Well, 7. No, and that's going to make things awful easy for Bob Moran. In fact, that just will about do it. Bob can keep the ball on the lane and keep from fouling. He should be the winner.
112 for Pat Pay and a 366 total.
Bob has 356 right now, plus the fill on the spare. So this one ball could be the end of the match.
Anything over 5 will do it.
Next week, Dave Cromie from Peterborough, New Hampshire will be with us. And he'll be taking on Bob Moran.
What a comeback.
You know, I was just thinking that, Doug. It's kind of fun to watch a veteran like Bob Moran. I don't care if he's 100 pins behind. You just can't count him out because he's just going to bowl his game. And if he loses, he loses. But he's not going to beat himself.
Bob right now at 370 with 1 box to go. Well, it's been a long time between wins for Bob Moran here on Stars and Strikes. His last one was back on November 2nd, 1986. Just a little more than 2 years ago. Took him the full 2 years to get back on the program. It's been a while since we've seen him here. But he made today pay off against a guy who's won an awful lot of matches on Stars and Strikes. Bob Moran finishes it up in style with a 10 and a 139 for a 380. And after trailing by 44 pins after the first string, Bob Moran comes back and takes it away from Pat Pay. 380 to 366. We'll visit with the bowlers and shoot for $170 in the bonus ball contest in a minute. $75 is the runner-up, and Pat, you'll also get the runner-up plaque from the N&R Trophy Company, and boy, just tough breaks in that particular match, and Bob really came right at you.
Yeah, well, I had him the first string, and then he come right back after me, and he kept going. He did it.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the ladder champions qualify for the Tournament of Champions, and where you did not win the ladder championship, you're eligible to come back later on in the season, so perhaps we'll see you again soon.
I hope so.
All right, Pat, thanks very much, as always. Still one of the all-time winners here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes, Pat Pay. And now let's bring in Tony Maceos, the General Sales Manager of Gladstone Ford Chrysler Plymouth on Route 102 in Londonderry, one of our sponsors in this particular championship. And Tony, we've had a couple of great matches here so far headed toward that big money.
As usual, the bowling is fantastic, and there was a great come-from-behind win from Bob Moran. Just want to remind him we do have a check for $1,000 waiting for the final winner, the last match.
And we're going to see you in 2 weeks to present that. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll be here.
You keep close watch over that money for us, all right?
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Tony Maceos from Gladstone Ford Chrysler Plymouth. And now we will head over to lane 31 and Bob Moran for the bonus ball. $170. And Dan Murphy will draw it. And it's going to be, we had another pin drop, I believe, a couple more. It's now an 8. There you go. Okay, Bob, come on over and we'll chat for a minute. Oh, just missing with a guess of 9. Stanley Willows from Manchester, New Hampshire. So, Stanley, you'll get a TV50 NHCBA desk pen. Will you, we kind of take these people out to lunch or something after the show to pay them back? Did they inspire you to that win?
No, I don't think so. It actually was a little distracting. I almost burst out laughing. I wanted to tell them throw a tent over the circus, but they're having a good time, and I'm glad they came, really.
Heck of a comeback after that rough first string.
Yeah, it was. I've learned how to grind them out and relax, and I had a lot of trouble getting my timing and my rhythm, my tempo, but I slowed down, threw a better ball, and it paid off.
Into the semifinal match next week. Dave Cromie will be here. We'll see you then.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Bob.
Thank you, Doug.
Bob Moran with a big win. And next week, it's the semifinals, and I have a feeling we'll have a big crowd on hand for that one, too. Dave Cromie will be here.
And a noisy crowd.
Dan will be joining us then. We hope you will be, too. Until next week, next Sunday here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes, Doug Brown for the whole crew. Bye-bye, everybody.